of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call. Commissioner Rooney.
Here.
Commissioner Hoban.
Here.
Commissioner Goodsa.
Here.
Commissioner Swenson.
Here.
Commissioner Kantorowicz.
Present.
Commissioner Evans.
Here.
And the record reflect that Commissioner Talcott is here as well. Would you all please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. The consent agenda is made up of routine day items that require board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. We have two consent agendas. The first consent agenda A consists of the approval of board meeting minutes from 3/25 meeting and audit committee meeting minutes from 4/21. Payroll checks totaling $83,975.57. Maintenance and operation checks totaling $261,965.38. Approval of the passenger facility charge totaling $92,000, and the financial reports for March. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda A signify by saying aye.
Before we vote, we need to pull last board meeting's minutes from the consent agenda because they do not reflect the actual procedure that was taken. The minutes show that the maintenance and payroll checks were removed from the agenda and a separate vote was taken on them, but there was no reason as to why they were removed. And if you're going to look at the minutes and follow the reasoning, there needs to be an explanation of why those checks were removed.
Any other comments relating to Commissioner J.C.'s comment?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the removal of the minutes for subsequent correction, discussion and correction.
Is there?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the consent agenda A have the be approved except for the board minutes from the March 25th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? So now we have, before we move to consent agenda B, we have the approval of the board minutes. What changes would you like to be made to the consent agenda? Or excuse me, to the board meeting? What additions? J.C.?
You speaking to me?
Yes, I am.
Well, I just want the minutes to reflect the discussion that was held about conflict of interest and the reason for the checks being withheld and voted on separately. then that way anyone reading the minutes will recognize the thought process that went through to the end vote. Just as today's agenda shows a separate vote on the construction checks to Talcott Construction.
So what would you like to add to the, just to give staff direction, what would you like the minutes to actually say?
So I have, up above there then, to approve the consent agenda less item C due to a conflict of interest with further checks being withheld and voted on separately for future consent agendas whenever a Talcott construction check is present. Something very similar to that.
Yeah.
And we've got
Yeah,
that.
just make note of it as being in compliance with the conflict of interest policy.
You know, I'm not here to argue, but I think we did ask
We-
the
yeah.
attorney, and
The
the
attorney-
attorney
attorney
was
says
okay
it-
with it.
Yeah, the attorney says it can go in on the consent agenda, because again, the decision that would have had a conflict of interest was the original award. What Nick says the conflict would be that original vote. Once it gets to the consent agenda, you're just reimbursing for a cost that was incurred.
Okay, but that's not my point. My point is somebody from Timbuktu reading the minutes of the meeting will look at it and say, okay, these checks were removed, and then there was a vote on them. But there's no explanation as to why they were removed. And that's all we need to enter into there is just, here's this explanation, and then we go on with it from there. Nothing to do with the votes or anything else.
Yeah, we recorded it, so we can go back through and listen.
Well,
try
it's
to
what,
reflect it.
if you look at today's agenda, consent agenda, that's what we're doing. It's just making a separate vote on there.
Right.
So it was just agreed upon by the board to remove James Talcott construction checks from the consent agenda in a separate?
No, that wasn't my point. My point was the minutes from the last meeting should reflect the reason, the thought process, that the maintenance and payroll checks were separated out of the consent agenda and then subsequently voted on and approved. There needs to be a reason there, and there's no reason. There's just removal and then a vote later.
And I think because you're the one that made that, would it be appropriate to help us out as to what that reason was, if that's what you're looking for?
I thought I said that already 3 times. It was just recognition of the conflict of interest policy and making sure that there is no conflict of interest within the votes on the consent agenda.
I don't think that it is in conflict with the conflict of interest policy, but if you want to put it in the minutes that you felt it was, I'm happy to put it there. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, we're talking about the prior meetings minutes,
Mhm.
Right.
just our discussion,
Mm-hmm.
just to clarify what,
Yeah, just clarifying the
What was
process is
discussed
all it
there.
has to be there.
whether, right, different. No, I think that's fine, and I thought your wording was just fine.
Just that a discussion
Yeah.
took place, and this is how we decided to move forward, is to
Yes.
separate them.
Yep.
Yeah,
Whether it is or is not a conflict, we're going to move forward in this
Yes.
manner.
Yep, that's fine. Just some explanation of why that happened.
Got it.
so do we need a motion to move to accept the prior meetings
Board.
minutes as amended?
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the board minutes as amended from the March 25th, 2014 meeting and audit committee minutes from 4/21, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Got it.
They're okay?
You're on top of it.
Okay, as I'm going to abstain from consent agenda B, Commissioner Evans, can you?
Sure. Consent agenda B consists of one item, maintenance and operation checks number 20409 and 20447, Talcott Construction totaling $267,547.70. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item B? Consent agenda B.
I move we approve consent agenda B.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? The motion's been made and seconded to approve consent agenda B. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.
Okay, thank you. I think we're down to the director's report.
Yes, we've got a couple things to report on quickly this month. As you may recall, the Allegiant flights, the new LA flights start here in June, so we're just over a month out from those flights beginning. I spoke to Allegiant yesterday, and they said the advanced bookings have slowed quite a bit on those. Initially we were doing very well, but now they've slowed. I think traditionally Great Falls seems to book late. Just seems to be a sort of a month out type market as opposed to a 2 or 3 month out. So I'm hoping we'll catch up. We still have some advertising. You may recall that we increased the marketing budget in preparation for these flights back in, it was February. And Allegiant has not placed any of those ads yet, so their main marketing push is yet to happen. So we're hoping we'll get some benefit out of that as they place their ads. I'm actually traveling to see Allegiant tomorrow morning. I'll see them on Wednesday and Thursday at their annual conference. That'll give us an opportunity to talk about some of the marketing efforts they've got planned, and also we'll see how we're performing for them as an overall market. Typically we do very well for Allegiant, so we're hoping to see a steady progression in our profits for them here in Great Falls. So hopefully we'll see those LA flights pick up in bookings over the next month or two before the flights start, and then be a stable part of the summer. The other thing I was going to report on this month, Rod and I and Laura met with MDOT and the City of Great Falls last week on the I-State development, and I thought we had very productive meetings. The plans have now been submitted to the city for the I-State development. They were submitted last week, so they're in process, and the discussion with the city went very well. As you may recall from previous meetings, our zoning is compatible and we don't subdivide our land. Really the plans go directly to plan review down at the city, and they had a few comments on landscaping that the architect took note of, but for the most part they seemed pretty agreeable to the development. In the MDOT meeting, MDOT focused primarily on the width of the truck, I guess what would you call it, an outlet? Approach, thank you. The approach that they would be allowed to have on their development. Because of their proximity to the interstate, they can only have one approach, and the MDOT folks would really like to see that be a 50-foot or a 60-foot approach. I-State would really like a 70-foot approach. So the architect and MDOT are going to exchange some more auto turn type truck movements to see how that can best be navigated, and then hopefully that'll get approved. So MDOT did agree to go ahead and process this development kind of as a standalone, as opposed to involving it with that intersection design with our future retail development. So for the time being, while they're doing their system planning on this intersection, they're not looking ahead at all this development. They're just looking at the I-State development up here. So I thought that was a really productive meeting too, and I think I-State's well on their way to getting their permitting so they can start construction this summer. So, and they did start paying rent on April 1st, so that cash flow has started also, which is good for us. So, positive developments there. And then I have the monthly capital project, capital funding plan here that I'll pass around. Oops, which I just ripped in half. Sorry about that. I'll pass it around, and we don't have any changes this month. We didn't process any change orders, either on the terminal or the SRE building. So there's really nothing new on here. The contingency stands at $67,000 for the terminal. We do expect we'll spend that as we get some images for those image boards once we get them hung. Contractor's still working on the plan for how to hang those. But over on the SRE building, I did make one change. You can see in the budget in the upper half there, I reduced the contingency by $100,000, dropping it down to $114,210. We had been carrying a $200,000 contingency, and the main reason for that is we had a lot of savings on the office development. It was about half what we originally budgeted, so there wasn't any reason to continue to carry that much contingency when we had savings. So down below, you can see I reduced the contingency soft cost budget down there. We were carrying a 208 for the 875 for the office development. It came in at 129, so I reduced the soft cost budget by 79, almost $80,000 down there in the bottom. Since the last meeting, and that's really the only change we've had since then. We haven't processed any other change orders. So we have $101,000 left in the contingency budget on the snow removal building. We think that'll be more than enough to complete the project, even after we take out $100,000 up above. So in good shape on that one. And that's all I have on the director's report this month.
Okay. Any comments or questions of the director at this time? Okay, next item on the agenda is the Front Range Aviation lease. Can you give us background on that?
Absolutely. Laura, will you
Sure.
come up?
Nothing has changed on this from last month. So Front Range Aviation, Mike approached us and said he wanted to put up another hangar. The hangar that they're looking at is 125 by 125. It will, if you look on the back of your board packet sheet, can you show, John, up on the map there? It butts up to additional ramp that Front Range is already paying for, and then they'll have to add some additional ramp. So the area that the hangar is going to be on is an area that we were able to do a lot of work on, groundwork, flatten it out. We needed fill for up on the snow building. So we were able to make a pretty good building site, which is what caused a lot of people to get excited about it. So that's why you have two different rates in there. You have an improved rate and you have an unimproved rate. So what the building is sitting on is an improved rate at 14 cents a square foot, and then the unimproved is where the ramp will be. And we're not positive on exactly what the square footage will be until they're positive. So this is pretty firm, but this could still fluctuate depending on what the final plans are. It'll be about $3,600 a year coming in, and will be a 20-year lease with an option for 10, which will be automatic as long as nothing is in default. They will perform the same functions in this hangar, so it's going to be a separate lease that will tie back to their main lease that they have right now, that will give them the ability to conduct commercial activities out of this hangar as well. This will start May 1st, so that they can break ground whenever they're ready to break ground. So, questions?
How did you come up with the square footage? I know we had discussions on other hangars that in the past we had leased only the footprint of the building,
Correct.
and that meant that people were kind of parking on land that weren't leased, and we just wanted to make sure that we had.
This is squared off. This is in line with what we had set forth with the Fisher hangar.
And that may predate some of the current commissioners. In the past, what was allowed to happen was tenants were only required to lease what they actually build improvements on. And so, if you look at the hangar development, you might have a big square for the hangar and then a narrow driveway down below. And they were only leasing in some cases, the big square, and even the driveway wasn't leased. And so you have this area of space out here that we couldn't lease to anyone else, because obviously you couldn't put even a vending machine or anything in front of this hangar because the wingtip would hit it. And what we said is, going forward, we want to get rid of that approach And, you know, if you're taking up and consuming all of this space with your wing and everything, you should really be leasing, you know, the entirety of the parcel all the way up to the face of the,
Or parking
Yeah.
vehicles outside.
yeah, and some vehicles were being parked outside, and drainage became an issue, and so now what we're doing is kind of squaring off the parcel so there's not dead space between hangars or in front of hangars and that type of thing.
And this one's a little bit different with that too, just because it is butting up to existing ramp
Mhm.
that they're already leasing from us, so.
Okay. Are there any questions of, this is an action item, so
It is.
if there's any further questions?
I have one question, just because we were reviewing policies right before this at our retreat. Did this lease get legal review, or is it substantially the same as the original?
It is substantially the same, however, it has gone to Mick, and we are back and forth just probably one more time. And that's more about tying it back into the existing lease. So
Okay.
yes, it will have the final review on it as it's signed.
Okay.
But these are the basics of the lease. Nothing has changed from anything else.
Yes.
In situations like this, was that property advertised as available for lease, or is this just a first come, first serve, someone expressed interest?
It was really first come, first served. We typically, other than like a retail development or something where the market isn't right here at the airport, we typically don't advertise. Most airports don't advertise. If you had a building or something, you might, but there's so much land out there that's available that typically we don't advertise, you know, the vacant land. And generally, we have kind of the same group of 3 or 4, maybe 5 people that are, you know, that are kind of kicking the tires of a hangar. You know, and they kind of back and forth. I mean, on this particular site, there was 2 or 3 people that were interested. And it's just, you know, a matter of who instigates an actual lease first. That's why we came up with that option agreement a few months ago, as, you know, to kind of separate the interest from the people that were, you know, really interested and try and get commitments from people to take a site down.
Okay. Any other questions?
This project will be a definite plus for the airport. It's will increase the visibility of general aviation on this airport and services to general aviation. It's a good deal.
Yeah, hopefully it's a sign of continued demand and need for general aviation hangars at the airport. Okay, at this time, if there's no further questions, the chair will entertain a motion regarding the lease as presented from Front Range Aviation, or Front Range Aviation.
I move that we sign a lease with Front Range Aviation for the new hangar space.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we direct staff to continue and sign a lease with Front Range Aviation as presented. Are there any questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we've got taxi lane action.
Continuing with the theme of general aviation development, in your packet here, there's a map on the very back of the last page here under general aviation taxi lanes. And right in the center of the page, in the shaded area, you can see there's a new taxi lane showing that attaches to taxiway A. That taxi lane will actually come up and take a left and go down and meet next to the Davidson taxiway. And it will create the opportunity to build that first row of hangars that are shown on that development. What we show right now is 5 sort of 80 by 80 hangars. That could be adjusted to be several larger hangars or several smaller hangars. And then that taxi lane in the future can continue on up the hillside, sort of adjacent to the Front Range Road, and additional hangars can be built. And so what we're proposing to do is, this summer, Red Horse had mentioned they had some availability to come up and do some work. It's now looking like that would be at the very end of the summer. They've got to go do some work in North Dakota. If not then probably in the spring they would come out and finish this work. But we would buy materials. They would come up and pave that taxi lane and open up those additional parcels. We think the material budget is probably around $200,000. We've put some additional money in here to complete some design work on that. We basically plan to give them a section that we want to see built, cross-section of compacted dirt, some aggregate, and on top of that pavement, and they would build that standard section throughout. And then we're going to survey some points for the actual tie-ins and that type of thing so they know where it goes. And then on top of that, we'll probably do some survey work and some geotech work just to make sure that we've got enough compaction and things as the project is put in. So we're anticipating a total budget of $225,000. If we have some additional money, we'll probably continue to pave up that hill so that we can open up some more parcels for hangar development. But the good news is we've got a lot of interest down there now, I think, in additional hangars. And this area will allow us to open up a parcel that had been sitting there for some time. It was actually graded out earlier today when we talked about the line of sight issues on 321. They needed some dirt, and that area was graded out to approximate airfield grade way back when the runway was done. So it's prime for development. We just have to get access to the airfield, and that's what this project will do. So we're excited to recommend to the board that you authorize us to spend about $225,000 to construct some new taxi lanes in the GA area.
Any questions? I have one. I assume that even though it's for general aviation, it will be owned by the airport.
Yeah, it'd be owned by the airport. We're going to build to Group 2 standard, so that'll be a kind of a mid-sized general aviation airplane. Actually a pretty good sized general aviation airplane that'll allow access back in there. But yeah, typically we would own the taxi lanes.
Okay, so I assume this would be built just like if it was being put out for bid and would have the same design requirements and testing requirements and everything
Exactly.
else, is just like you do everything else that's done on the
Yeah,
airport.
we'll use an FAA pavement standard for this. Like I said, our engineer will design the section that we need to meet. And then that'll be built, and like I said, we'll have some on-site survey to make sure that it's being built as designed.
And inspection as you would any other project.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, the chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the funding for the general aviation taxi lane.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve $225,000 for the construction of taxi lane as described to be built by Red Horse. All those in approve signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Anything else? That's it? Okay. Okay. Any comments from the Airport Authority Board? Commissioner Rooney?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Holden?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Goodson?
No.
Commissioner Swenson?
Over the weekend, a couple of things came up. One I'll bring up in the work session, but I had a passenger and his wife complain about the way they were treated by TSA. So I showed up a little early and I tried to take a look at things, and the security guard helped me take a look at things. And I'll be contacting that passenger, and I might even get a hold of Kent to review the security video. But we'll see what was going on, whether it's a legitimate complaint or not.
Okay. Commissioner Evans?
Nothing.
I have no comments at this time. Is there any, does the public have any comments at this time? Okay, at this point, then the board meeting is adjourned, and if you just give us 5 minutes, and we'll reconvene for the work session. Thank you. You're all welcome to a well-cooked cookie.
I didn't see my cookie.
Last week's cookie.
Tell you what, those would be good for it.
I was sitting here thinking, where are you at?
They're gonna critique us.
Well, I see they were handed out, so I mean, I was sitting here looking at mine going, what the heck are we doing?
I think you're gonna get it.
What are you doing, Jim? You also-